Thank you so much for joining. This is Black at Kearney's and Lean In's Black History Month panel. The theme is Agency in Action, Driving Change. The idea of agency is all about using our voices and our actions to make lasting impact. And our panelists here today have done exactly that. They've worked in education, in leadership, community action, and social mobility to make lasting change and create opportunities for others. I'm Ashley Stewart. I'm a manager here at Kearney, and I will be moderating this panel today. So I'll start with Joy. Joy is a business psychologist, executive coach, board leader, and author. As the founder of Inemo, which is an award-winning consultancy, she works with senior leaders internationally to strengthen their self-knowledge and their impact. She's the recipient of several fellowships, including the Institute of Directors, Institute of Leadership, Chartered Management, and she has actually been honored by King Charles III with an MBE for business and charity. Her agency takes the form of being involved in several high-impact programs and organizations, including Leveling Up, which provides career development and coaching for youth, Kaya Housing, which provides housing for young pregnant women, and Core to Your Future, which provides refugees with coding and data analytics experience. So thank you, Joy. Welcome. We can next move on to Naomi. So Naomi is head of research at Rare Technology, and she's the founder of Target Oxbridge, which is pioneering a pioneering program to help around 600 Black, African, and Black Caribbean students secure offers at Oxford and Cambridge. She's worked to transform how elite universities think about access and representation. She's a graduate of Oxford herself, who studied philosophy, politics, and economics. She worked in education policy at the Department of Education and in the Treasury. She's also the co-founder of BAME Fast Stream Network and Oxford Black Alumni Network. And her agency has taken the form of power through data and storytelling to change systems from within. Thank you, Naomi. Next, we have Effie Blankson. Effie is a chartered manager and a transformation practitioner. She's the founder and chair of Basingstoke Unites Against Racism, a coalition of Black and Asian community groups driving tangible change across education, policing, health, civic life in Hampshire. Her professional work combines grassroots leadership with strategic transformation to help organizations enhance their corporate social responsibility initiatives, delivering community-centered impact. Effie's belief that everyone is a change maker runs through everything that she does, and her story is a masterclass in turning conviction into collective impact. And finally, we have Aleesha Bruce. Aleesha is a consultant at Oliver Wyman and a graduate from the London School of Economics in Politics and Economics. She has done work in social mobility advocacy and has been recognized as an Upreach Social Mobility Award winner. She's an honoree of the Bright Network for Breaking Barriers. She's one of the top 150 future leaders, and she's won the Undergraduate of the Year award. Her podcast, My Younger Self, her YouTube channel, and her school talks empower young people from working class and mixed heritage backgrounds to help allow them to see themselves in areas where they might normally be underrepresented. She's actually presented her story to Queen Elizabeth II, which has been covered by the BBC, ITV, and Evening Standard. And her journey is really a testament to resilience and the ability to turn resilience and transform your struggle into purpose and influence. So I'm really excited for this amazing panel that we have here today. Let's start with a question for all of you. What does agency mean to you? We'll start with you, Joy.
Thank you, Ashley. For me, agency is, my belief and my conviction that I don't need permission to act. I can change my own spaces and have others change their own spaces My motto is simply be the difference, make the difference. Simple as that.
Wonderful. Naomi?
Thinking about the definition of agency, which is to have the power to act, have the power to affect the world around you. I've always thought of that as being the place where the things I really care about and want to make a difference to overlap with the things I'm able to do in terms of my skill set, the gifts that I have. Not everything I see that I wish could be changed, I'm the best person to deal with. But there are some things where that aligns really well. And that's where, for me, my agency has been.
For me, it's the spirit of flourishing and just seeing everything around you blooming. And of course, starting with, as our very own Michael Jackson sang, starting with the woman in the mirror. That it starts with you first. And once you flourish and you can see that spirit around you, you can be that agency or that agent to see everything else around you, community also flourish.
Wonderful.
Firstly, I just wanted to say thank you for having me and for reading out the intro as well. It was weird sitting here and hearing you say that as well, so thank you. I think like when you come to a panel like this and you hear like all of these bios and all of these achievements, it can, you can lose the definition of agency and think it might mean you've got to do all of these incredible, amazing things. But actually, to me, I think agency is just like leading your own life first and being the main character in your own story, doing what it is that you want to achieve and, just fulfilling those dreams that you have for yourself, despite the background that you might have come from or the barriers that you might face. The point that you just touched on as well is by leading your own life and having that agency over your own life, you'll help other people without even realizing, just through the change and transformation that they've seen in you and the confidence that you've seen in yourself as well.
I love that. It's really about taking things into your own hands, but through your own experiences and what you see in the world. So Effie, following up on that, what's a moment throughout your career and your life where you realized you could act and you could take agency into your own hands?
I would say my real becoming came off of the back of George Floyd. My entire life has been shaped around my grandmother, who is probably for most people the matriarchs of all families. And growing up in a very large family setting, it meant that everything was shared at home. But beyond that, we saw her do little things that didn't make sense from the beginning. But actually, from about 19 to 21, I began to realize what she was doing. Because in Ghana, we have a big can, which will probably be maybe about 2 kg of, say, tomato paste. And you would have a local food called gari or sugar or peanuts. And what she would do, particularly around festive periods, would be that she would buy loads of it, and then she would stand us round the area to distribute it to particular women or households. And like I said, it didn't ring until later. But then as we, as children, jolly around the neighborhood, you see those families as well have broken down those little resources and selling them at home, earning an income, feeding the family. And that was community in action that as a young girl didn't quite get until about 19 to 21, where it finally sank. And so in my own little way, we kept doing things, mentoring young people, etc., and all of that, until Floyd happened. And I was standing in the living room with my husband, who I keep saying whenever I recount this story, my husband is a very vocal man, but to see him so still, and we were all in that moment of, that could have been him, that could have been me, that could have been any one of us, our godchildren, our children, all of that. That silence, that broke us, and it broke me very deeply. And once Amazing Grace, we were actually watching the memorial, once Amazing Grace came in as a person of faith, that even hit harder for me. And in that moment, it was, that spark was, you have to act now. You've always been in the background. And I like being in the background because I still, as much as I'm front facing now, I still believe that being in the back is pretty amazing because you can see all of the flowers that you're helping to bring to that flourishing. And so we took that mantle there and then in the living room, myself and my husband, that we were going to act. We live in Basingstoke. It is our home. And if charity begins at home, then we are going to focus on Basingstoke and then empowering our young people, because obviously Floyd came from policing, acting in a way that is not humane. And so we'll start particularly with our young people to really empower them, because knowledge is power. We say that it rolls off our tongues, but we don't really think about it deeply. And looking at our secondary schools to our colleges, we knew that a lot of our young people do not even understand their basic rights when it comes to stop and search. And so the focal point of forming Basingstoke Unite Against Racism was really to help our young people start to understand the powers that are being used against them, and also to start building some needed trust between particularly Black and Asian communities and law enforcement, which has 5 years on, we've seen over 1,500 young people benefit from that. It's now as best practice in the College of Policing bank. And we've seen across Hampshire an increase in the desire for schools to want to take up that program that we started. But then that led on to, tell me if I'm talking too much because I can go on. that led on to, I was talking about a domino effect. Because sometimes we think about change, like you're saying, it's a big thing, but it really isn't. Because I had a feeling and a conviction in my living room. But then I asked one question of my member of parliament: this is what I'm doing. What are you going to do about it? And what she did then meant we had a bigger field to play with, because she took it one step further by not just supporting and also introducing me to key people, because these things work with strategy. You just don't get up and do. You've got to bring the people who matter to the table. So putting me in touch with those people was top priority. But that one step further of initiating a local BAME inquiry meant that we were going to bring all of the public institutions, from policing to the county responsible for education, healthcare, civic life, all of these players to the table to hold accountable for what are we doing for our town. Because a lot of the time, these inquiries are national and we know it. They don't go anywhere. They sit on the white paper and then something happens. We've seen it from McPherson all up until God knows who else. They just sit on the paper and you have to keep fighting. And so that local one meant that we could just focus on home. And that has sped on. Again, that domino effect means that healthcare leaders are really standing up to the issues that matter to us within the Black and Asian community. The increased, rates of maternity mortality rate, the gaslighting of fibroids, endometriosis, perimenopause, all of these things that affect Black and Asian women disproportionately. All of these things have come to fore, teaching locally Black history in schools, adding it to the curriculum. And so I could go on, but that collective view meant that we've been able to achieve what, if one grouping alone was attempting it, would not have succeeded. And it sped us forward to bringing other people to the table, which meant that apart from my group, Basingstoke Unite Against Racism, I could bring 5 other groups to the table to form an umbrella consortium, now called Kikoi Connection, that is a force to reckon with by all of the leadership. And when they hear our name, they know they've got to sit on.
That's wonderful. And so, Effie, while your work has really focused on your community, the place that you're in, your own neighborhood, Joy, I want to talk about the fact that the work that you've done has really spread widely. So you've kind of looked at different types of people, from senior executives to youths and everyone who needs an opportunity wherever you see it. So what has that that change moment looked like for you when you realized you could act.
That I can act.
Yeah.
It's really funny because Ashley and I were talking about that word activism when Ashley first asked me about activism. Activism? It didn't resonate. I didn't see myself as an activist. I just do what I do. I didn't set out to do anything or anything like that. But it made me reflect, and maybe that's, I need to own that in some way, shape, or form. Because for me, when it started, I found myself sitting in a boardroom in Wembley Point, building off the A406. I was at a final stage interview, and I was there with a personnel director, and it's very close to Stonebridge Park, if I tell you the location exactly. And I remember like it was yesterday, he said to me with a big smile on his face, "Joy, you're on a short list of 1." And then what he said next was very surprising because he said, we have high hopes for you because, a positive is that you're Black and the people in the call center that we want you to manage, it's one of the departments we want you to be in charge of, are also Black. Okay. So I thought, okay, fine. Then the next thing he said to me is, the real reason we have high hopes for you is because, see, the people in the call center, they're more like factory workers, but you're different.
Oh.
And I sat there, I didn't know what to say, but I can tell you that any one of the young people I mentor today would get up and walk out of that room.
Mm.
I stayed. I didn't do that. I would have encouraged them to get up and walk out of that room, to be fair. But I didn't stay. I don't know. I didn't leave. I don't know why I stayed. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was a challenge, whatever it was. But then roll forward a couple of weeks and I'm in the office and in the call center and I look across 70 stations and I recognize the talent and the potential that nobody else saw, that they were not being recognized for who they were and the talents and the energy and everything, the vibrancy that they brought to the piece. And in those days, I, as a director and manager, and like many others, we were sent across, different countries to be developed, leadership development, leadership conferences, and all of that. But these people, nothing. There was no training and there was no training budget for them. So what do you think I did? That's when I started writing training programs. I decided to take the knowledge that I had gained and the materials that I had and create training programs for these individuals. I wanted them to see their potential, to see themselves how I saw them, and to forget the noise outside that told them they weren't worthy. It was so successful that we had people from other departments wanting to come and join. But really and truly, I think if I look back, that's when I thought, I need to act. I need to do things differently. And my supervisors, they were called supervisors at the time, I changed their roles to team leaders because I wanted them to see that I saw them as leaders. I wanted them to take accountability of their own journeys. And that for me is when it started, actually.
Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah. So Naomi, in your work increasing the number of Black students who apply to and get access to Oxford and Cambridge, what really inspired you to go down this path and what barriers have you faced in that journey?
I went to study at Oxford, having grown up in Croydon. I was the eldest of 6 girls. My parents hadn't been to university. I went to a comprehensive school, moved to a grammar school for sixth form, which in itself was quite a shift. And so by the time I arrived at Oxford, it was a pretty big culture shock for me. Back then, there weren't very many Black students at the university, and the state school figures were quite low also. I always say that I made it through Oxford because I had the African and Caribbean Society, and that was a safe space and a home away from home for me. but I left quite aware that things there were not as they could be in terms of representation. I've been very lucky to be supported by Rare Recruitment as a candidate. They work to help young people from diverse backgrounds into jobs. And I ended up working there for 1 year before going to the civil service fast track. And I always say that that gap was one of the best accidents that ever happened, because it just so happened that as I started to work at Rare, there was this huge media storm around Black students in Oxford. And the announcement was that one Black student had been accepted that year. Now, I just left and things were bad, but they weren't that bad. If there had been one student admitted, we would have all been speaking about it because it would have been terrible. Ultimately, the figures have been mangled in the press. There was a big fight in the press between the university and the government. But what I was aware of is when that died down, nothing actually happened. There's a lot of talking about Black students in Oxford at that time, but not much doing. And my boss at Rare was equally annoyed about it. And he said to me at 21 years of age, "Do you want to do something about that?" I was like, and inside I was quite young. I hadn't been given that sort of opportunity before. And my instinct was to be like, oh no, I don't think I can. I haven't designed something. I haven't led something like that before. It's quite big. And he said, well, design something. If the board signs it off, you can run it. And so I did it because I thought, well, this is a huge opportunity. Very rarely does the thing I care about align with the skills I have and the resources. I don't normally have resources, but suddenly I do not with them. So I just said, well, I've got to go for it and see what happens. And so I designed that program, and this is the program that I wish I had, because I always said that I did make it to Oxford, but it was luck, really. If I hadn't had one intervention from one teacher or something had gone differently, I might not have ever made it. So I built a program to support young people similar to me to see themselves represented in the university and role models, to get the right advice on what to choose, to get to go and visit, and also to get that application and interview support that so many people get in other schools. And it was just to level that playing field. And we started small. And that's why I always say I started with just 6 year 12 students and 6 year 11s. And now the program helps hundreds a year. But I think starting small is really valuable. We tested the idea and we were able to prove that it worked. And then it was able to grow. And I think sometimes people think, oh, this is such a huge problem, I couldn't possibly change it. But by starting small, because that's what I could do at the time, and it was enough, and it grew from there.
Amazing. I want to bounce off of that idea of starting small. And Aleesha, talk us through, you've kind of taken this other approach to reach people where they are with the content that you create, so your podcast or YouTube channel, and through talks. So how does that look like for you, and what barriers have you faced as you've kind of launched those different avenues in media for reaching people?
Yeah, of course. I had a few motivations to why I started content. It was similar to you, Naomi. One of the biggest motivations was my upbringing. So when I was growing up, I had a very difficult upbringing, similar as well, council estate background, went through neglect and abuse at home, all of the above kind of. And I would always search on YouTube and online for educational YouTubers because I wanted to just find motivation to push myself out of that situation, because I think I recognized from a very young age that education could be a tool that I could use to escape my family circumstances. And when I looked online, there was a lot of content creators online that were in the educational space that were motivating, but it was a very white-dominated field at the time. And it was also very dominated by creators that came from a more privileged background. And it's little things that you think might not affect you, like me switching on a study with me, and the creator has like this massive, really nice desk set up with 3 monitors and the room is pristine. Whilst I'm in my little Harry Potter box room. And, like, it had the opposite effect. It was quite demotivating, actually. And that's why I really, really wanted to start. I think that actually ties into one of the barriers behind why I didn't start my content earlier, was because of my space that I was in. I actually felt very uncomfortable filming videos in my room and posting it online. It's funny, actually, because I made a graduation vlog recently when I graduated from uni. And in the vlog, you can see there's like holes in my ceiling. And I had this thought process. I was like, do I edit this out? And I was like, no, do you know what? I'm going to leave it and just be that bit authentic as I can. So that was a big motivation. I think another motivation was inaccessibility to knowledge. And that was something that you said earlier as well, about knowledge being power. And I recognized that as well quite early because I gained a lot of scholarships throughout my education, which is what allowed me to get to where I am today, to be honest. I always joke and say that I'm a scholarship baby, not a Nepo baby. And I had a scholarship to a private sixth form as well as to university, which was just mind-blowing when I received both of those. Just couldn't believe it at all. But I think what was funny with the first scholarship I ever had, which was to the private school at sixth form, I found it by accident. I literally found it like 2 days before the application closed and was frantically doing the entrance exams and just locking in, banging out revision and just really trying hard for it. And it's crazy how that aligned actually, because if I had found out 2 days later, then I wouldn't have gone to that sixth form and would probably have a very different journey now. But I think that was something that I recognised. In the UK, there's millions of funding that is wasted every single year and the main reason is because people just don't know. Like you're not marketing to the right people, to the right young people that need to hear about these scholarships and these programs, these mentoring schemes, things that can really, really change your life. So that was my first proper YouTube video. I say proper because I used to have a YouTube channel where I do silly challenges like licking salt off my arms, but this was when I started to take it seriously. My first proper video was how I got a scholarship to university. And I broke down my application, broke down every single aspect of the application process to help young people get scholarships to their dream university as well. And I think the impact from that was just very unexpected for me. It was less about the views because I think it's just a number, so it's easy to fly over your head. But just the students that were DMing me and still DM me to this day from that video was just the biggest motivator to continue doing what I did online. And yeah, I think that threads through every single thing I do. So the school speeches, the mentoring, helping other young people. It's just the idea that if I can even just help one person just believe that they can escape from their circumstances and achieve what they put their mind to, then for me, there's nothing better than that.
It's amazing. Thank you for sharing. And you bring up an idea that I also want to talk a bit more about, which is around access. How do we reach the people that we're trying to support and to help? And so, Joy, I'll toss this question to you. How do you think about access and reaching out to people? And before you answer, I forgot to mention this earlier. We've been asked to project our voices a bit more. So if you can project as you respond. Exactly. To the back of the room.
Okay, so you're talking about access.
Access.
Right. Okay. Goodness, where should I start in terms of how I access? Well, today, in terms of access, it's sort of people for our leveling up program, which my company does as part of its CSR. That's more by referral. So people hear about it and they refer others. But I think it does start with the youth. It does start in schools. I used to be a board member of an organization called the Amos Bursary. I don't know if some of you might be familiar with it here, but in terms of access, we went to schools, we spoke to young people. A lot of them couldn't see it. A lot of teachers couldn't see what we saw, what we knew could happen for these young people. But it was founded by Pauline Amos and Baroness Amos in 2009, I believe it was. And it was interesting because it was called the Amos Bursary. And the idea was to identify individuals who had very little, underrepresented in business at universities, and to give them a bit of a leg up. And we had to start with the schools. We'd go into schools, we would tell them about this program. Now, when we were telling them about the program, it wasn't fully formed. But we had this idea that if we could build it, they will come. If we built it, they will come. We didn't have a clear picture of what the Amos Bursary would be. But as they came in and we listened to them and we listened to their needs and all of that sort of thing, we realized what the program needed to be. And so going from people who you go and you talk to them and they go, yeah, okay, another person telling me what I could be and what I could look like, to now today, there are boys and girls and hundreds, close to 1,000 now, that have been helped. I think that, in terms of access, it's really meeting people where they are and recognizing what it is they need, and then stepping back, opening the door and building it and letting them come.
Wonderful. Thank you. And Effie, you've had significant impact in Basingstoke specifically in the community that you're in and around. So I'm sure this question has come up for you as well. How do you access the people in the community in that sense?
Well, you said it, it's in the community, they're right on the doorstep. And our community largely revolves around caring for ourselves, from where you get your hair done, where you get your nails done, where you buy food, and of course, schools as well. And so we leaned in really hard into our salons, barbershops, and the schools, as well as particularly young people just hanging out, because that's what they do by the train station, and tapping into our own young people as well. I have an 18-year-old, and so I do ask a lot of questions. And she should just feed me with all of the info, all the jargon, all the language they're using now. Which some of which we've been using years before, but they think it's new. Anyway. So we leaned in really hard into the community and just listened. And I think a lot of the time we tend to talk a lot, but making change means actually listening and then taking action from there. So particularly for our young people, the question around why Black History Month came up in the salon. Why is it just October? And we had long debates, I can tell you, some of them were fiery. And also, particularly for our mixed young people, the confusion about identity was unreal. And sometimes you fail to recognize it because you think you know what young people need. But my goodness, we're blown away. So from there, we just decided to develop a program called Rooted and Rising, because you realized that they needed to be rooted first in their identity in order for them to understand that October is just one of those. You have your birthday in February or March or anything, it's just a celebration, right? But it's every day. And that hopefully when they could be confident in who they are, their identity, where they're from, where they're going, then they could rise even higher. And so we've had our 2 pilots. We decided to split it first with our young women and then our young men. And we designed a program around identity and finance. And then we asked them questions, through a survey beforehand. And so, what else do you want? And something that the girls, funny enough, kept bringing up was about their hair. How do I love my hair? And honestly, none of us adults at the table even thought about that for our young girls. And so we had to, of course, now tailor that in terms of how they obviously would love their hair and not feel like, they were a loud racket. So they used the words, how do I, keep my company, keep my friends without coming across as being a loud racket? Because obviously when you're in a group setting, you always feel like you have to be loud to be noticed. And so we changed the program slightly to be able to obviously get these in as well for them. For the young men particularly, it was about managing their identity and their finance and business. It was incredible how many of them wanted to learn more about entrepreneurship and how do I start and how do I manage my finances going into university. So the age range was 16 to 25. But it has meant that we have seen an influx of more young people really not around Black History Month, because they want it outside of that. And we want them to be able to focus around it's not just October. You're important to us and community throughout your whole life and every day. So that was leaning into our young people. And then for, again, through the salons and the local shops where we buy food, around health. Because and churches, actually, I should say, the churches, the constants that you hear with women around, particularly perimenopause, fibroids, mortality rates, and the gaslighting when you go to the GP. I know there's something wrong. But you're like, oh, it's normal for Black women. I've experienced it myself. And it is depressing. So we knew we had to bring the hospital leadership into it to be able to design key objectives, because we can't do everything. Just 5. I have a mentor who says to me, Effie, you should always just do 3 to 5 things. No more than 5, just 3 to 5. And so we focused on 3 to 5 things that we could work on together with a hospital around these concerns, bringing in all of the partners in Hampshire, because the NHS is huge. They don't even know how to communicate to each other, let alone, do good by us. So it's been a tall order, but that meant that out of that, we have been able to build a program called Voices of Resilience, particularly for women. And our next project is going to be around creating a setting for women to be able to have that safe space to feel they can talk, they can vent, because everybody talks about, I just want somewhere to just scream, away from husbands, away from children as well. So we're going to be creating that space in 2026 for women to be able to just scream and just vent as much as they want, and then get the real advice from experts within our communities as well, because there's nothing. Look, we can talk about discrimination and racism, all, but there is nothing sweeter than seeing someone who looks like you in a room. I remember when I was looking for a church when we moved to Basingstoke, we hopped around several churches. And the fact of the matter is that birds of a feather flock together. You want safety. You want that psychological safety. So I walk into a church and I look around. If I don't see a Black or brown person, I'm straight away uncomfortable, and I'm not going to fit in here, right? And so seeing our own expertise at play to just acknowledge that I hear you, I see you, and here's what we can do about it has been important as well.
Yeah.
So those are the 2 examples that I can give you, because I could go on and on, but those, it's just leaning in and listening to the community and letting them tell you what they need. Because you sitting at a desk and spewing things is never going to work for the community if the focus is doing right by the community.
That's a great examples. Thank you. So pivoting a little bit to talking about sustaining change and going a bit off of what you were talking about, Effie, of being having humility and listening in the way that you deliver your impact. Aleesha, how do you think about the balance between being a leader and then giving others agency themselves and the ability to lead as it relates to the audiences that you're connecting to? So given that they're younger, they might be peers as well. How do you kind of balance those different needs and dynamics?
Yeah, totally. I think the thing is that's interesting with content is that you are giving people the ability to lead their own lives. Like, I don't create videos instructing people, this is exactly what you need to do. And now I'm going to watch you through your computer screen and make sure that you are doing what I've told you to do. Like, it's very much you take that away and take from it what you maybe you don't take anything from it, maybe you scroll past it. But I think that's a beautiful thing, is that it's totally in your hands, it's your life, it's your own story to write that, because everyone's path is completely different. Not everyone's going to want to do what I do, for example. Not everyone's going to be interested in consulting. And I think that's why I really branched out with a podcast as well that I started to my younger self, because I recognize the value in bringing on different voices from different industries to just speak motivation and break down the steps that they took to get into their career paths. Because, yeah, like I mentioned, not everyone is going to be interested in my career path, but I wanted to just give a platform to inspirational people from different industries for young people to tune into and just access that knowledge. Yeah, that's what I'd say on that.
Great. And when it comes to the fact that you're creating content, it's very self-driven. So how do you think about scaling when it comes to scaling the impact of your reach?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question as well, because I don't I feel like I don't really think about it. Like I don't almost think about the numbers and the views, the subscribers, and see my content as something that is scaled. Like I view myself as very much at the beginning of my journey in terms of I've just graduated last year. I'm at the beginning of my career. I'm at the beginning of my content. And there's so much more like scope for what I want to go on to achieve. So I think having that humility and knowing that I'm very much at the beginning of my journey, not the end. I don't think you're ever really at the end as well. You can always see yourself as being at the beginning of a new chapter and a new goal. And I think that's what's really beautiful about life. But I think through that as well, through like content is such an interesting space because you can have people that have ingenuine motives for the content that they're producing online. I think one way that I stay grounded and humble is like through my friends that I have around me as well. Like I'm surrounded by people that would really knock me back into place if I was being too big-headed. Like me and my friends, we all banter off with each other and that really, keeps me grounded. And I think the fact that I'm just surrounded by so many people that are so inspiring as well. So I don't really sit and like think about what I'm doing in terms of, oh, wow, this thing is so big, because I'm surrounded by so many people that are doing such inspiring things as well. Like I even have like 4 friends in this room that are very close to me. I won't call them by name, but like they've done such amazing things recently. Like my best friend recently moved countries from Scotland all the way to London because she felt a calling to move here. She's moved without having a job in place. Like that is so inspiring and takes so much courage to do that. Again, my brother's in this room as well. Like he has been through so much. Like he literally walked in to a room where he saw that my stepdad had died in that room. And now he's interning and at an amazing university and interning at an amazing company. So I'm just surrounded by people that motivate me to keep on achieving as well because they're doing such great things. And the other thing as well that keeps me humble is my faith. That's something that's very important to me. It's recognizing that I have what I have because of God. I don't believe that it's, because of me, if that makes sense. Like when I was younger, I always recognized the gifts and talents that I was given in terms of firstly, the fact that we can even access education. Like I mentioned earlier, for me, education was a way out. But what a privilege it is that I can even access education, or what a privilege it is that I can go to school and actually focus despite what's going on at home and understand topics quickly. Like these are all gifts and talents that I recognize came to me not through myself, but through God. So all of those things keep me humble. But I think as well in your question, you spoke about the balance. And I think the balance is very important because sometimes I think, especially coming from disadvantaged backgrounds and ethnic backgrounds, that we actually need a little bit more ego and a bit more confidence. And that's something I've learned recently, having started my life in the corporate space, is that we tend to make ourselves small. And humility doesn't mean making yourself small or reducing your voice at all when you're in rooms with people that you think might come from more privileged backgrounds than yourself. It's actually, increasing your voice, but being humble through your faith, through your background, through your friendships, whatever that looks like for you, but still having the confidence and the authority to actually own your achievements and speak about them. Because if I didn't have any sort of confidence or awareness of some of the things I've achieved, then I wouldn't be able to help anybody because I would just view those things as normal, or like, getting into my company, that's normal. Getting a scholarship, that's normal. And then if I view everything like that, then I'm not going to help anybody because I don't view it as something worth speaking about. So I think it's a very fine balance, and it's something that in our community, in our space, that we need to like learn more in terms of gaining that confidence.
Excellent. Thank you. I want to take that and ask Naomi your perspective as well, because I love this idea of, we tend to try to make ourselves smaller. We kind of grow up thinking we need to be humble, don't be, too loud or too boisterous. But the ability to really sing your own praises and represent yourself and celebrate the work that you've done is really critical for making sure that we get far in life and in our careers. So how does that show up in the work that you do with the students applying to Oxford and to Cambridge?
When you were speaking, it reminded me of the inflection point for Target Oxbridge. We'd grown to a particular point and it had been pro bono funded by Rare. And we suddenly started to get loads of applications. So we had funding for maybe about 40 places. I'd already been helping more than that. I was working some long evenings. But suddenly we got 400 applications in a year because the word had spread. And I was looking at very, very able students who I was going to have to reject unless I could find a way to expand. And at that point, we've been trying for 5 years to get Oxford and Cambridge on board formally to work with us. But at that point, whilst now the Storms Scholarship is well known and it's very common to work specifically with Black students, back then, the universities were not aware that that was possible. It's completely legal under positive action provision in the equalities law, but at that point, this idea of a Black student focused program. And so I had to, at that point, be quite brave. And I wrote to them and I said, if you really do want to make a change that you're saying you want to make in terms of access, now is the time to do it. We've got the students. We just need to find the funding. And then I spent 6 weeks running around doing all of these different meetings with the different bits of Oxford. And that's where that data and stories came together. I had a presentation that I needed to do to lots of the senior tutors at lots of different Oxford colleges. At this point, I was sort of 26, so not as young, but still feeling quite young in a room full of very, able professors who've been at the university for a long time. And so I had all of my data. I made sure that I was able to say where our students were from, their grades, how many of them there were, all of the different metrics. And I also had their stories. I was able to talk about the students who'd done their exams whilst homeless, but still managed to secure their grades and get to university. The students who'd been at schools that didn't have a teacher for the year for a particular subject and still managed to succeed. And that managed as a pitch almost to secure that funding. I've been told that it doesn't normally happen that quickly at Oxford and Cambridge. So that was a point where I really had to go from, I guess, being quieter about the achievements to being quite loud. But I found that easy to do because it wasn't really about me. It was trying to secure the resources for the young people. And it's very easy to find a voice, actually, I think, when it's in service of something you really care about and others. And for the young people, we've always tried to create a space where they can share with us what they need. And so we survey them at the start of the programme, the middle and the end to ask, what do you know about Oxbridge? What would you like to know? And how are you finding the programme? And every year we learn something because things change. I was running it for over 10 years where I handed it over. And what I knew about being a young person changed. When I started, they'd exchange numbers, then it was Snapchat, then it was Instagram. I don't even know. But you have to keep checking in. And so we gave them a space to have a voice in how the programme worked for them and that.
Thank you. Well, I have one final question for each of you before we close this segment, which is what's one ally move that our colleagues and peers can take today? Start with you, Joy.
I'd say that we should see each other as they are. Not as we are. We should see people as they are. I know it should be a short response, but I'll explain why. I think that, over time, there's this idea that the Black community means that everybody is the same. And we've stopped seeing people as individuals, but the Black community. When we work with DEI, let's just get a Black face in the office and let's tick a box. But I have found on my journey that individuals, when you meet them where they are, when you see them for who they are, just understand, they say you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so you listen more, that you really understand where they are, why they are, who they are, and where they want to go. My company I started in 2005 while I'm still gainfully employed by my last employer. The company is called INEMO, INEMMO, and they're the first 2 letters of inspire, empower, and motivate. And I put that challenge out to everybody here today. Who can you inspire? Who can you empower? Who can you motivate? Starting with self, but who else? I firmly believe that our purpose on this earth is to be in the service of others. And that's why I want to be the difference that makes the difference.
Naomi?
I think often we can find ourselves in rooms where a conversation is being had about people, but not necessarily with them. And when I noticed that with Black students, I wanted to constantly remind the institutions to speak to those students. And so I think if you were in a room and a group of people is being spoken about, but the work isn't being done with them, maybe raise that question. Have we spoken with them? Have we tried to find them where they are? I will say people are not hard to reach. They are here. You need to go and find them, yes, but they're not under a rock somewhere. And so why are you hard to access? That's often the question that I like to ask instead. It's work with people instead of speaking about them.
Thank you. Effie?
I would say I was particularly inspired by a course I went to where the course lead told us about Otto Scharmer's open mind, open heart, open will. And it's really about everybody having an open heart, an open mind, and then that open willingness to hear who is next to them. You know, you see black, I see white, you see pink, I see peach. And we see things, you know, differently, but we must have an openness and an open willingness to hear each other out, because ultimately we still need each other. I always say that even if I was giving you a gift, in my handing over to you, you still have to extend your hand to receive it. So it's symbiotic, it's a relationship. And so I would say that when I think about allyship and what can you take with you tomorrow, just remember that it is in giving that you receive, in that exchange, with an open heart, an open mind, an open will.
Thank you, Effie.
Well,
Aleesha?
tough to follow. I think just linking to everything that's been said and just adding on to that, I'd say an important thing to do in the workplace is to understand other people, to really make that effort and take the time to understand everyone else's different journeys, upbringings, backgrounds, and that will make such a difference, because people don't often speak about how difficult it is to go from a working class background or a disadvantaged background into a middle class profession. And it almost feels like there's a lot of support to get you into the door, but not much support when you're actually there. And what that can look like. For example, when I was interning 2 years ago now, I remember I had a situation where I was at a partner dinner. There was like 5 partners from very advantaged backgrounds, and they were speaking about where they went to ski last winter. And I'm like, I cannot relate to this conversation. What do I say? So I think just having that sensitivity in terms of conversations like that and making everyone feel included in the rooms that they're in, because it's very hard to navigate a space where you don't feel represented, you don't see people that look like you or come from your background. So just, you know, building that inclusive environment.
Wonderful. I think we now have a few minutes for questions from the audience. Are there any questions? And then I think we have someone monitoring the chat as well. Good.
Even the panelists, I just had to say thank you for your insights and the kind of message that you've given today. I just like to also say that it's also very amazing to see such powerful Black women be able to talk about their achievements and also difficulties. So my question is that as a Black community, I feel like we've come so far from where we was. I also feel like we're nowhere near where our potential could be. So just to look a bit more introspectively, what do you think as a community, you and Paul and everything in between, us as a community and the way we get together? Us as a community, what do you think we can do in terms of moving more forward as a people?
So the question is, if I understand correctly, is what can you do? What can we do to take a step further in taking action in the community?
Yeah, as a guest.
Right?
That's what
I think that having been front facing and center for 5 years, non-stop in community, working with different shades and egos of people, being brutally honest with ourselves that there are times where we are our own enemies. And if we are truly going to move forward, we really need to act like we are together. When I've in the past spoken to the council, sometimes the council comes up with, we want to be able to see this in the community. And then last year they gave me an example, oh, we have Diwali. And so, what's there that Black people, could do? I was like, well, you do realize Diwali is faith-based. Black people, there's Caribbean, there's African. Which one? Those in itself are divides. Even on the continent of Africa. I mean, same like here in England, there's Scotland, there's Ireland, there's, we have your own internal wranglings. So do we. The Black community and the Asian community, we have our own internal wranglings. But then even on the continent of Africa, the West Africans, Ghanaians and Nigerians, we have our own special beef. South Africa, East Africa, we all have our different kinds of beefs. But then I said, look, you want to focus on something that's going to bring us together, is food and music. So we can tailor something around food and music, because once you spark joy, you see real unity in action. And a lot of the time when we go to parties, you leave, parties in such, you're exhilarated, you're wanting, when is the next one? And you're working the same way. It's mindset, open heart, open mind, open will. And until we really gel and say that the focus is one, it's equity, it's a level playing field, it's an opportunity for our young people today, tomorrow, and years from here on. That is the only time we are really going to see the change that we need to see. So we're pulling together, we're still pulling apart, because we're allowing some of our internal wranglings or beefs to hamper our progress. So for me, it's just being brutally honest with ourselves that we are also contributors to our lack of progress in a certain way. So the structures are already working against us, but we ourselves need to be able to hit harder within our communities and against the structures so that we can get more.
Thank you. Naomi?
Just to add, I was reflecting on what I often say to the students that I've worked with, which is when you get to where it is you're going, in that context, it's usually university and then maybe onto a graduate job. I also remember the help you had to get there. And then remember to pay it forward, because the worst thing is when people make it to wherever they're trying to get to, and then they just decide that I've made it now and I'm closing the door.
Yeah.
And when somebody comes knocking and says, oh, I need some help, or, oh, can you come and speak at this event? I say, well, I made it by myself. Nobody makes it anywhere on their own. And so it's really important when you've made it to your next stage to just think, okay, what could I share with the next generation behind me? It's really hard as one person to solve everything. But you can look just behind you and say, who's coming up behind me? Let me just pass them some of these things that I learned. Let me share with them some of the things that I've gained. Because if everybody does that with 2 or 3 people, then we get to progress a bit. So I think it's really hard to think about the whole community as an individual, but you can think about, who's next to me or just behind me, and can I bring them with me?
I think we should stop waiting to be included. I think we should take our seat at the table. And if was talking about when you're in the presence, when you're in a room, when you're the only brown or Black person there, how uncomfortable it feels. I think we should start dealing with that discomfort, owning the discomfort. It's real, it's true for us. I had the same experience when I go to work at the Institute of Directors. If I'm there in a room, maybe, I don't know how many seats in the room, maybe a couple hundred or whatever. Oftentimes I'm the only Black person there. And I wonder, where are all my other successful Black people? Where are they sitting? It's okay for us to be gathered in community forums and to help lift each other up. We need that. But I also think it's for us to take that seat that we deserve. Be in the rooms where decisions are being made, where policies are being driven, and have a voice within that. Don't wait to be invited in. Just walk in. You own it. You deserve it. We deserve it.
Thank you. think we have time for one more question. So the question from Angel is, how do you endure and keep going when you keep hearing no's until you finally get to a yes?
I don't mind.
Aleesha.
I've been rejected a million times, so I don't mind starting with that one. I think it's when you begin to normalize rejection and realize that it's a part of your everyday life, that's when you start, putting less weight and emphasis on it, and you start to just push through and not give up. I've been rejected so many times, like university applications. I wanted to go to Cambridge. They didn't want me. It's fine. Internships, job applications, like it's just such a massive part of life. And if you give up, you'll never know what you could have achieved. And there's this image that's always in my head when I think about rejection, which I don't know if you would have seen it, but it's a picture of a miner that's digging through a mine and there's a bit of gold, exactly. And he turns away from the gold, literally like an inch away from him reaching that. And I think for me, that visual is just so powerful in my mind. There's been so many instances where if I had given up, I would never have achieved what I have or been where I am today. And I think it's just having that faith and knowing that everything works out for a reason and everything is that you are where you're meant to be and everything is planned for you. Like, for example, if I was at Cambridge, I wouldn't have gone to LSE and I wouldn't have got one of the biggest scholarships in the UK, which meant that I left university debt-free. I wouldn't have met the people that I met. I might not be at the company that I'm at because I wouldn't have been in London and in the city. But those things, you don't think of those things at the time when you're being rejected because us as humans, we don't have that ability to look forward. But I think it's just having trust in knowing that everything happens for a reason and you've just got to keep going. You can't give up. That's what I'd say.
Thank you so much. And please join me in thanking our wonderful panelists.